One important concept in cryptography is digital signatures, which is similar to public key cryptography, except the process is quite reverse. So as you may know, in public key cryptography, we encrypt a message using the receiver's public key, and they decrypt it by using their private key. In digital signatures, as you can see, we encrypt using our private key, and the receiver decrypts or verifies the message using a matching public key. In this example, as you can see, Alice agrees to pay $500, and we sign or encrypt that message using the sender's private key, in this case Alice's private key. This is the encrypted format of it. Now when this reaches the receiver, Bob, he uses Alice's public key to read what is encrypted or what is signed. If he can read the message, he can be sure that the message must have come from Alice, because after using her public key, he could read the message, which must have been encrypted or signed using Alice's private key. Alright, so that's the whole process of digital signature. So, in other words, we are saying we are using digital signatures for assurance. For example, let's consider the situation where Bob has just sold Alice something for 500 birr, as we have seen in the above diagram, through a deal that is made by email. Alice sends an email accepting to pay $500 or 500 birr if you are Ethiopian. Two issues need to be taken care of in addition to authentication. One issue is Alice needs to be assured that Bob will not modify the amount and show that Alice promised to pay more than 500. The second issue is Bob needs to be assured that Alice will not deny that she sends the message, which is called a non-repudiation issue. If Alice signs the message digitally, the two issues will be resolved. There are several ways to place digital signatures, but we will see two of them in this video, using public key cryptography and using something called hash or message digests. To see how digital signature using public key crypto system works, let's have some notation. Kx minus, which is private key of x, Kx plus, which is public key of x. So when Alice sends her message M to Bob, she encrypts it with her private key, as we have seen in the above example, which can be symbolized as Ka minus of message M. In other words, encrypting message M using Alice's private key. If she wants to keep the message content, which is called a memo, to keep the message content or the memo a secret, we can use the receiver's public key and send it like, in this example, public key of Bob, or in other words, the encryption of the message M and the signature using the public key of Bob. So we are signing or encrypting both the message content and the signature, which is the encryption of the message M using Alice's private key. Alice is protected against modification by Bob, since if Bob produces M prime another message, he has to find the private key of Alice in order to produce a deceiving message or a deceiving signature. So he can't create another message and produce false signature because he doesn't have her private key. To see how digital signature using public key crypto system works, let's consider this diagram. So let's say this is Alice's computer and this is Bob's computer. Now, as we have said, Alice uses her private key in order to produce the signature of the message M. If she wants to encrypt the message content, she uses Bob's public key, which is the encryption of the message M and the signature using Bob's public key. When this message reaches Bob's computer, what Bob does is he decrypts this message using his private key, because it was signed using his public key. He should be able to decrypt it using his private key, a matching private key. When he does that, he reads the message content M and the signature, but he doesn't read the signature yet. To make sure that the message really comes from Alice, he can read the signature using her public key, and he finds or reads the message. And now he can make sure that the message really came from Alice because he decrypted the message using her public key, which must have been signed by Alice because she is the only one who has a matching private key. Alright, so that's how digital signature using public key crypto system works. The second way of placing digital signatures is using a hash or a message digest. Now, a hash or a message digest is a short signature or representation of the message, the whole message, which is the memo. The hash length is 128 to 512 bits. That depends on the entire message. It is extremely improbable that unequal messages have the same hash. Example of a hashing function or hashing algorithm is MD5, which is message digest version 5, which is nowadays proven to not work 100%. This algorithm can fail sometimes. So in other words, you can find two different messages which can have the same hash value if you use this hashing algorithm. SHA-256 is 100% collision free if you use SHA-256. There will not be probability that two messages have the same hash value or message digest value. I think if you check in websites, you will find that they use SHA-256 to ensure customers that they are in a secure website. So using hash, what we do is we use, as I told you, a hashing function or hashing algorithm of the message M, whatever input message we have, and we produce the hash value or the message digest, which is sent along the original message, where H is a cryptographic hash function. So this will be the signature, which is Alice's private key of the hash value, not the message. So if you remember, previously we have signed the message M. Now we sign not the message M, the hash value of it. So what Alice does is she signs the hash value, not the message itself, or she signs the hash value, and if she wants to make the message content a secret as well, she uses Bob's public key in order to encrypt both the message and the signature, which is sent so that Bob knows that it comes from Alice by decrypting it. Bob hashes the message M and compares it with H that he has received from Alice. He independently hashes the message using the same hashing algorithm which he shares with Alice. The hashing algorithm or the hashing function is known by both. So he hashes the message M independently and compares it with H that he has received from Alice, which is the hash value of the message she sent him, signing it with her private key. So he compares them. If they match, then he becomes sure that the message was really sent and signed by Alice. So as we said already, they share the same hash function H, and she produces hash value of the message M. She encrypts it using her private key, which will be this output. So this is the signature. She sends it to Bob. Now Bob uses Alice's public key in order to read or in order to find the hash value. He doesn't read it actually because it's a hash value, not plain text. Now the only option he has is, if he can't read it, he can produce a hash value because he has the same hash function, and the message, the original message, he has the message and the same hash function. Now he hashes this message. If the hash of the message he produced matches with the hash of the message he found by verifying or decrypting the signature, which was signed by Alice, by comparing them, if they match, then he makes sure that the message was really signed or sent by Alice. Another way of communication is, in addition to hashing, Alice can also use Bob's public key in order to encrypt both the original message M and the signature. She can send it to Bob. Bob can use his private key in order to read the message content. Then he can use the matching hash function in order to produce the hash value and compare them. Alright, that's an alternative way of doing it. But in this diagram, we are focusing only on using hashes or message digests to place or to apply digital signatures. Alright, so that's how we can apply digital signatures, both using public key crypto systems and message digest. Another important concept in cryptography is digital certificates. So you may ask, what is the difference between digital signatures and digital certificates? So as we have said already, digital signatures are used to bind a message to the person who claims to be talking to us, right? In other words, we want to know if that person is really that person, and we want to know if the messages are tempered or modified, and we want to make sure that the person who participated in the communication doesn't deny it. Alright, so digital signatures solve those issues. So in digital signatures, we don't really care if someone else is eavesdropping on our communication or if there is a confidentiality issue. Because as you may know, in public key cryptography, anyone who has a matching key can read our message. So for example, when Alice signs her message using her private key, she expects that anyone who has her public key can read it. But that's not her concern. The concern here is that, one, the receiver becomes sure that she really signed it. Second, the receiver doesn't modify the message in order to deceive Alice she said something else. And the receiver makes sure that the two parties participating in the communication don't deny they participated in it. Whereas in digital certificates, we want to know who can read our messages. Only people with valid certificates, or in other words, with valid public keys, should participate in the communication. I think the best example I can give you or I can think of is, for example, a bank wants to know if you have a valid bank account, which is like a digital certificate, and account number specifically, which is like a public key on a certificate. Alright, so anyone who has a valid bank account can make or do transactions in that bank. They should be a member of the bank, in other words, right? They should be a customer. Someone should have a valid public key in order to participate in a communication. That's what it means. And also the bank wants to know if it is really you who signed it to do transactions with another customer. All right? They want to make sure that it's really you who made that signature or who put that signature. In addition to identifying you as a customer of the bank, they want to make sure you are really the one who signed the form before they can allow you to make transactions with other customers. Right? They should identify you and they will allow you to make or to do transactions with the right person in the right way, without modifying or without making fraud or fake transactions, which is like digital signatures, in which we ensure the authenticity of the signer by decrypting or verifying the signature using their public key, which must have been signed or encrypted using a matching private key. So we can also say that digital signature is kind of a method of binding a person to a communication, and digital certificate is a document which serves as an ID card for an individual to participate in a communication. So how do we make sure that the person has a valid certificate? We request a certificate from a third party called a certificate authority or a certification authority, which provides certificates basically. So we need a certifying body to make sure that we don't prepare our own fake certificates. So we don't have to use someone's public key and encrypt and send message to them because they told us to do so, right? We have to make sure that they have a valid public key, they have a valid certificate before we can consider talking to them, because they can be hackers. So we should make sure they have a valid certificate. So a certificate normally is just an ID card which has some related information like user's name or user's ID, user's public key, which is important as I said, name of the certificate authority, start date of certificate, and length of time it is valid. Alright, so that's the distinction between digital signatures and digital certificates.